I will never forget the sound of my 5-year-old son screaming as I burst through that bedroom door. What I saw made my blood run cold. My sister Jessica had Leo suspended upside down by a belt, his little face purple and streaked with tears, while her phone sat on a tripod recording everything. She wasn't even looking at him. She was staring at the camera with that practiced influencer smile, saying cheerfully, "Hey everyone, today we're teaching my lazy nephew a lesson about speed. His mom is too soft, so Auntie has to step in. See, fear creates velocity. Don't forget to like and subscribe." My son's terrified wails were just background noise to her content creation. I lunged forward, ripping Leo down from that nightmare, but Jessica actually grabbed my arm. "You're ruining my shot. This is gold content, Sarah. Do you know how many views this will get?" Behind me. I heard my parents walk in. I turned to them expecting shock, expecting them to finally see how twisted this had become. Instead, my father crossed his arms and said, "Jess is just playing around. You're being dramatic, Sarah." My mother nodded, adding, "The boy could use some iron discipline. We raised you girls with a healthy dose of fear. It builds character and speed." That was the moment. I knew I wasn't in a normal family anymore. I was in a horror show, and my son was the next victim. But if you want to understand how I got to that breaking point, how a grown woman let her family terrorize her child, I need to take you back to the beginning. Before you judge me for staying so long, walk with me through the years that led to that terrible day. And hey, if this story resonates with you, if you've ever felt trapped in a toxic family dynamic, hit that like button and subscribe. Your support means everything, and the comments section is a safe space to share your own experiences. Now let me tell you how it all started. I was 22 when I got pregnant with Leo. His father, Marcus, seemed like everything I needed at the time: charming, confident, attentive. We'd been dating for 8 months when I found out I was expecting. I remember the exact moment I told him. We were sitting in his car outside my apartment on a Wednesday night, and I'd rehearsed what I was going to say 100 times. I handed him the positive pregnancy test, my hands shaking. "Marcus, we need to talk about this." I watched his face transform from surprise to something cold and distant in seconds. He didn't even look at the test for more than a second before tossing it back at me. "That's not mine," he said flatly, his voice void of emotion. I felt like I'd been slapped. "What, Marcus? We've been together for 8 months. Of course it's yours." He turned to me, his eyes hard. "And even if it is, I'm not ready for kids. This is your problem, not mine. You're on your own, Sarah." He started the car before I could even respond. I remember scrambling to grab my purse, almost falling out onto the sidewalk as he drove away. That was it. No discussion, no consideration. He blocked my number that same night. By morning, his social media was deleted. He vanished like smoke, leaving me standing there with a positive pregnancy test and a future I had no idea how to face. I was devastated, terrified, and completely alone. My tiny studio apartment barely had room for me, let alone a baby. The walls were thin enough that I could hear my neighbors' conversations. The kitchen was a hot plate and a mini fridge. The bathroom had mold in the corner I couldn't afford to fix. I was working as a receptionist at a dental office, making barely above minimum wage $9 an hour with no benefits. I did the math over and over. There was no way I could afford daycare, diapers, formula, and rent. No way. I spent 2 weeks in denial, going through the motions at work, coming home to stare at that positive test I'd hidden in my bathroom drawer. Finally, I worked up the courage to tell my parents. I drove to their house on a Sunday afternoon, my stomach in knots. I expected disappointment, maybe anger, definitely judgment about getting pregnant outside of marriage. What I didn't expect was what felt like relief on their faces. I'd barely gotten the words out sitting at their kitchen table, fighting back tears. "Mom, Dad, I'm pregnant. Marcus left me. I don't know what to do." My mother, Carol's eyes widened, and then she was around the table, pulling me into a hug. "Oh, sweetheart, come home. You can't do this alone. We have plenty of space, and we'll help you. You're our daughter. We'll take care of you." My father, Richard, nodded enthusiastically from his chair, already looking more animated than I'd seen him in months. "Your sister just moved out for her fancy new job in real estate. Her old room is empty. It's perfect timing. We'll turn it into a nursery. You and the baby can stay as long as you need." He paused, then added with a smile that seemed almost too eager, "It'll be nice having a baby in the house again. The place has been too quiet." At that moment, their offer felt like a life raft. I was drowning in fear and uncertainty, and they were throwing me a rope. I didn't question why they seemed so willing, almost excited. I didn't wonder why my mother immediately started talking about baby furniture, and my father was already planning which room would be whose. I was just grateful. Desperately, pathetically grateful. I moved back into my childhood home 3 days later with 2 suitcases and a box of belongings. Everything I owned fit in the trunk of my beat-up Honda Civic. The first few months were actually wonderful. It felt like I'd made the right choice. My mother came to every prenatal appointment sitting beside me, taking notes on everything the doctor said, asking questions I was too overwhelmed to think of. What about her iron levels? Should she be taking additional supplements? What are the signs of preeclampsia we should watch for? She transformed into this attentive, caring version of herself I hadn't seen since childhood. My father insisted on paying for a private room at the hospital. Only the best for my daughter and my grandchild, he'd said, writing the check without hesitation. He started coming home from work earlier, asking about my day, seeming genuinely interested in doctor's appointments and ultrasound pictures. Jessica, who I'd always had a complicated relationship with, even threw me a surprise baby shower. She'd just gotten her real estate license and was already making impressive sales closing deals on starter homes and small condos. She went all out with the shower, renting a private room at an upscale restaurant, hiring a professional baker for a 3-tiered cake, filling the space with elaborate floral arrangements. There must have been 50 guest people I barely knew, some of them Jessica's colleagues and clients. "Only the best for my future nephew," she announced loudly when I walked in, making sure her assistant was filming the moment, capturing my surprised expression, the tears in my eyes. She'd even hired a photographer. Every moment was documented for her growing social media presence. Her Instagram was already nearing 50,000 followers, filled with perfectly curated shots of beautiful homes, luxury open houses, and now her generous sister act. I remember opening gifts while cameras flashed, Jessica sitting beside me, her arm around my shoulders, beaming at the camera. "Isn't my sister glowing? I'm going to be the best auntie ever." She'd bought the most expensive gift herself, a designer stroller that cost more than 2 months of my old rent. "You deserve nice things, Sarah. Let me take care of you." Looking back now, I can see the red flags I was too grateful to notice. The way my mother would sigh heavily whenever I mentioned wanting to find my own place eventually. I'd be looking at apartment listings on my phone, and she'd glance over my shoulder and say, "Those neighborhoods aren't safe for a baby. You should stay here where we can help." Or, "That rent is astronomical. You'd be throwing money away. Why leave when you have everything you need here?" My father would chime in with things like, "You'll always be our little girl. No need to rush into independence. What's the hurry? You've got your whole life ahead of you." He'd say it kindly, patting my hand, but there was something beneath it, something that made me feel small and incapable. The way Jessica's generosity always came with a photographer or a camera crew, turning my pregnancy into content for her followers. She'd stop by randomly with groceries or maternity clothes, always with her phone out. "Let me just grab a quick pic for my story." My followers love seeing me help family. Or she'd insist on taking me to prenatal yoga classes, ones she'd already paid for, with her videographer in tow. "Content gold," she'd whisper to her assistant while I struggled through poses, my belly making everything difficult. Leo was born on a freezing January morning, January 14th, at 5:32 a.m. I'd been in labor for 18 hours, and he was perfect. 10 fingers, 10 toes, a head full of dark hair that stuck up in all directions, and eyes that seemed to look right through to my soul. He didn't cry right away, just gazed around the room with this serious expression, and when they placed him on my chest, I felt something I'd never felt before. Pure, overwhelming love. And terror. I was responsible for this tiny human. I named him Leo because it meant lion, and I wanted him to be brave in ways I wasn't sure I could be. Strong in ways I was learning I wasn't. My family was there for everything. My mother stayed with me in the hospital room, sleeping in the uncomfortable chair, waking every time I woke, helping with those first terrifying diaper changes and attempts at breastfeeding. My father paced the waiting room during labor like an expectant father himself, calling family members with updates, handing out cigars he'd bought specially for the occasion. Jessica posted a carefully curated birth announcement within an hour of Leo's arrival. I was still exhausted, bleeding, barely coherent, and she'd somehow gotten a professional quality photo of Leo, swaddled in a designer blanket she'd brought, hospital bands, carefully arranged lighting, perfect. The caption was something sentimental about family and new beginnings, and being grateful. It got thousands of likes. Her followers loved it. When we brought Leo home 3 days later, that's when the dynamic began to shift. Subtly at first, so slowly I didn't notice the chains forming around me. My mother started making decisions without asking me. I'd be about to feed Leo, and she'd swoop in. "It's not time yet, Sarah. We need to keep him on a schedule. Every 3 hours, not before." I'd protest that he was crying, clearly hungry, and she'd shake her head. "Babies cry. It doesn't always mean they need to eat. I raised 2 girls successfully. I think I know what I'm doing." When I insisted on trying to breastfeed despite the difficulties, she'd hover, criticizing my technique. "You're not holding him right. His latch is wrong. You're going to give him gas." After 2 weeks of her constant commentary, my milk dried up from stress, and she seemed almost satisfied. "Formula is fine, better even. Now I can help with feedings." And she took over measuring bottles, precisely controlling feeding times, making me feel like I couldn't even do this one basic thing for my son. When I'd protest, my father would intervene. I remember one specific morning. Leo was maybe 3 weeks old, and I was trying to dress him. My mother had laid out an outfit, but I wanted to use a different one, a simple onesie a friend had given me. My mother's face tightened. "That's not appropriate, Sarah. It's freezing outside. He needs layers." I tried to explain we were just staying inside, and she snapped at me. I said something about making my own decisions for my baby, and my father appeared in the doorway. "Sarah, your mother is just trying to help. She raised you and Jessica perfectly fine. You should be grateful, not argumentative. This attitude isn't attractive." He said it calmly, but there was steel beneath it. A warning. I backed down. I always backed down. Jessica, meanwhile, was skyrocketing in her real estate career. Within 6 months of Leo's birth, she was selling million-dollar properties, the luxury homes with pools and home theaters. She traded in her sensible sedan for a BMW, started wearing designer clothes with recognizable logos, carrying handbags that cost more than I used to make in a month. She'd stop by the house at random times with expensive gifts for Leo, always making sure someone was filming. I remember one afternoon, Leo was about 4 months old, and Jessica burst through the door with her assistant and a camera. Surprise, Auntie Jessica brought presents. She'd bought a designer baby outfit, something from Gucci or Burberry, I don't even remember. Tiny jeans and a sweater that probably cost $200. She held it up, her assistant filming. "Look at Auntie Jessica's present, only the best for my perfect nephew." She insisted on changing Leo into it right there, posing with him for photos, her assistant snapping away from different angles, while Leo squirmed and fussed. Then she'd leave off to another showing or meeting, and I'd be stuck with another impractical item Leo couldn't actually use. Designer clothes for a baby who spit up constantly. Expensive toys he was too young for. It was all for show, all for her followers, and I was expected to be grateful. I tried to find work when Leo was 6 months old. I needed independence, needed my own money, needed to not feel like a child in my parents' house. I applied to receptionist positions, retail jobs, anything that would take me. I had an interview lined up at a medical office, decent pay, flexible hours. The morning of the interview, I woke up early, got dressed in my only professional outfit, and was about to leave when my mother came into my room holding Leo. "He has a fever, Kim," she announced, her hand on his forehead. Leo looked fine to me, playing with her necklace, smiling. I reached for him, felt his forehead. He was warm, but babies run warm. "Mom, he seems okay. I really need to go to this interview." She pulled back, her expression wounded. "You're going to leave your sick infant for a job interview? What kind of mother does that? He needs you, Sarah. The job can wait." The guilt crashed over me. I canceled the interview. Leo's fever was gone by noon. Looking back, I wonder if he ever had one at all. Or there was the time Jessica needed me to babysit for one of her open houses. Leo was about 9 months old. She called me at 8 a.m. on a Saturday. "Sarah, I need a huge favor. I have a massive open house today, super high-end clients, and I need you to watch their kids for a few hours, just 3 or 4 hours tops. Can you do this for me?" I hesitated. I'd planned to take Leo to a music class, one of the few things I did on my own with him. "Jessica, I have plans with Leo today." Her voice went cold. "Plans, Sarah? You don't have a job. You don't have responsibilities. I'm asking you for a few hours to help your sister, who pays for your son's diapers and clothes. Family helps family. Or are you too selfish for that?" My father overheard from the kitchen and called out, "Sarah, help your sister. Besides, what kind of mother leaves her infant with strangers at some music class anyway? He's too young to appreciate it." I ended up at Jessica's open house from 10 a.m. until 6 p.m. 8 hours, not 4. Watching 2 spoiled children ages 3 and 5 who destroyed her staged living room while their parents viewed homes. Jessica breezed through, once phone in hand, barely acknowledging me except to whisper, "You're a lifesaver. I'll make it up to you." She never did. The months blurred into a year, then two. I felt like I was disappearing, becoming a ghost in my own life. I had no money of my own. My father controlled everything, giving me a weekly allowance of $50 like I was still a teenager. "This should cover anything you and Leo need," he'd say, handing me the cash every Monday morning. If I needed more, I had to ask, and he'd want an itemized explanation. I remember when Leo was about 18 months old, I wanted to buy him new shoes. His feet were growing fast, and his sneakers were getting tight. I asked my father for money. He was reading the newspaper at the kitchen table. "Shoes, how much?" I told him probably $30. He lowered the paper, looking at me over his reading glasses. $30 for baby shoes. "That's excessive, Sarah. Check the clearance rack and bring me the receipt. I want to see where my money is going." I was 30 years old, and I had to bring my father a receipt for my son's shoes. Jessica controlled the narrative, posting pictures constantly of Auntie's special days with Leo, while I was conveniently cropped out or mentioned as my sister who needed a break. Her Instagram was a highlight reel of her playing the generous, fun aunt. Leo at the park with Auntie Jessica. Leo eating ice cream with Auntie Jessica. Leo opening presents from Auntie Jessica. I was erased or reduced to a footnote. Gave my sister the day off so she could rest. Being a single mom is so hard. Her followers ate it up. "You're such an amazing sister. Leo is so lucky to have you. Not all heroes wear capes." She'd screenshot the comments and show them to me, beaming. "People really appreciate what I do for you, Sarah. You should be more grateful." My mother controlled Leo's schedule down to the minute. Nap time was 1 p.m. exactly. Dinner was 5:30, bath was 7, bed was 8. If I tried to deviate even slightly, she'd intervene. Leo would be playing happy and awake, and I'd think maybe we could skip the nap today, let him stay up. My mother would appear. "It's 1 p.m., nap time. Routine is essential for children. Don't you want what's best for him?" When Leo turned 3, I made a serious push for independence. I couldn't do this anymore. I was losing myself, and worse, I was losing Leo. He called my mother Mama sometimes, and it killed me. I'd been secretly applying for positions for weeks, checking my email when everyone was asleep, having phone interviews in my locked bedroom while Leo napped. Finally, I got an offer. A position at Brookside Elementary School as a teacher's aide. $28,000 a year with benefits. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Enough for a small apartment. Enough for daycare. Enough for dignity. I was so excited. I'd done the math 100 times. With subsidies and careful budgeting, I could make it work. We could make it work. I came home ready to share the good news, imagining their pride, imagining my mother saying she was happy for me. Instead, I walked into an ambush. The moment I stepped through the door, my father called from the living room. "Sarah, come in here now." His tone made my stomach drop. I walked in to find my entire family sitting there waiting. My parents on the couch, Jessica in the armchair, all their faces grave. Leo was in the playroom, thank God, out of earshot. My father spoke first, his voice hard. "We need to talk about your irresponsible behavior, Sarah." I was confused, my mind racing. What had I done? What are you talking about? He leaned forward. "This job fantasy you've been pursuing. Did you think we wouldn't find out?" My eyes went to Jessica. She smiled, cold and satisfied. She'd somehow accessed my email. Later, I found out she'd guessed my password, went through my laptop while I was sleeping. She'd printed everything: the job application, the email correspondence with the principal, the apartment listings I'd saved. She'd presented it all to my parents like I was a criminal, like I'd committed some terrible betrayal. "You were going to just leave," my mother said, her voice trembling with manufactured hurt. Her hand over her heart like I'd wounded her. "Take our grandson away from us after everything we've done for you, after we took you in when you had nothing. This is how you repay us." Jessica leaned forward, her voice sharp and cutting. "Do you have any idea how selfish that is? Do you have any concept of reality, Sarah? We've been supporting you financially for 3 years. 3 years. That job wouldn't even cover daycare costs. You'd be homeless in a month. You'd lose Leo. Is that what you want?" I tried to defend myself, my voice shaking. "I've done the math. I can make it work. There are subsidies assistance programs. I need to do this. I need to be independent." My father held up his hand, silencing me. "We've consulted with a lawyer, Sarah. Several lawyers, actually. Given your financial instability, your lack of employment history, And your complete dependence on us. If you try to leave, we'll fight for custody of Leo, and we'll win." The room spun. I couldn't breathe. I looked at Leo playing innocently with blocks in the corner of the playroom, just visible through the doorway. Unaware that his entire future was being weaponized against me. Unaware that his grandparents were threatening to take him from his mother. My father continued, his voice matter of fact, like he was discussing the weather. "We have documentation of everything, every dollar we've spent, every decision you failed to make properly, every instance of your instability. A judge would see that Leo is better off with us. Think very carefully about your next move." My mother added, softer, but no less threatening, "We only want what's best for Leo, sweetheart. And right now what's best for him is stability. This fantasy of independence, it's not realistic. You'd be hurting him to satisfy your own ego." I turned down the job. I called the principal from my locked bedroom, tears streaming down my face. "I'm so sorry, but I have a family emergency. I can't accept the position." She was disappointed but understanding, kind. "I'm sorry to hear that, Sarah. If circumstances change, please reach out. We were really impressed with you." I thanked her and hung up, then slid down the wall and cried for 3 days straight. Quietly in the bathroom with the shower running so no one would hear. Crying in my car parked at the grocery store. Crying into Leo's hair while he slept, apologizing to him for being too weak to save us. After that, I stopped fighting. I became compliant, docile, the perfect grateful daughter they wanted. I took care of Leo, but under their rules. I smiled for Jessica's photos holding him, while she posed next to us playing the role of the struggling single mom saved by her generous family. I ate dinner with them every night, listening to Jessica brag about her latest sale, the new clients, the recognition from her firm. My parents would beam with pride, showering her with praise. "Our Jessica so successful. We're so proud." Then they'd glance at me with pity, sometimes saying things like, "At least you have Leo, that's something." But Jessica's success came with a darker edge I didn't notice until it was too late. She started becoming more demanding, more entitled. Success fed her ego, and her ego became monstrous. She'd show up at random times and expect me to drop everything to help her stage a property or babysit a client's kids during a showing. "You owe me," she'd say casually when I hesitated. "I bought Leo's birthday presents, all of them. I pay for his preschool tuition. That's $700 a month, Sarah. You can spare a few hours." The verbal jabs increased too, especially at family dinners. Jessica would make comments about my appearance loud enough for everyone to hear. "Sarah, you really should try to keep up with yourself. I know a great salon. I'll even pay for it since you know you can't. Being a mom isn't an excuse to let yourself go. I mean, look at celebrity moms. They manage." She'd laugh, and my parents would laugh uncomfortably but never defend me, or about my parenting. One dinner, Leo was being fussy, tired from a long day. I was trying to calm him down, and Jessica said, "You know, studies show that children with weak maternal figures develop attachment issues. Leo might benefit from more time with strong role models, like me." My father cleared his throat and changed the subject. My mother served dessert. No one ever told Jessica to stop. No one ever stood up for me. The financial control tightened like a noose. When Leo needed new shoes, I had to ask my father. When I wanted to take Leo to a movie, I had to justify the expense. Why does he need to go to the movies? He can watch films at home. When Leo's preschool had a field trip that required a $20 fee, my father questioned whether it was necessary. What are they teaching 3-year-olds on a field trip? This sounds like a waste of money. Meanwhile, Jessica posted photos of her luxury vacations to Cabo and Paris. Designer handbags that cost thousands. Her penthouse apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the city skyline. She'd send me links to her posts. Just posted the pics from my Paris trip, check out the engagement. The contrast was deliberate, I realized. She needed me to fail so she could succeed. She needed me to be the cautionary tale, the example of what happens when you get pregnant young and make poor choices, so she could be the responsible one, the successful one, the family's pride and joy. Leo started preschool when he was 3, and I thought maybe that would give me some breathing room to figure things out, maybe a few hours alone to think clearly. Instead, it gave my family more control, another string to pull. They insisted on paying the tuition directly, choosing the most expensive private preschool in the district. Oakmont Academy, $700 a month. "Only the best for our Leo," my father announced, writing the check, making a show of it. What he didn't say was that now they had another way to threaten me if I stepped out of line. If I complained too much, if I tried to set boundaries, the underlying message was clear. We pay for his school. We can take that away. We can take everything away. You have nothing without us. When Leo was 4, things took an even darker turn. Jessica had built a massive social media following, over 200,000 people watching her life, her properties, her perfect family moments. Her Instagram was her life's work, her identity. And she started including Leo in more content, not occasionally but constantly. At first it was relatively innocent. Leo helping Auntie Jessica bake cookies, both of them covered in flour, laughing. Leo playing in the yard chasing bubbles, cute harmless stuff that got thousands of likes. But then it became invasive, aggressive, calculated. She'd film him during tantrums without his consent. I'd hear Leo crying upstairs, and I'd find Jessica filming him. "What are you doing?" I'd ask, horrified. She wouldn't even lower the phone. Content Sarah, authentic moments. My followers eat this up. Real parenting isn't always pretty. She'd post it with captions like, "Even perfect nephews have bad days. Parenting truth." She'd stage elaborate scenarios for content. Setting up fake tea parties or craft projects she'd make Leo participate in redoing takes over and over until he got it right. "Leo, sweetie, that's not how you smile for pictures. Try again. Show me happy. No, not like that. Like you mean it." Leo was 4 years old, and he was being directed like an actor. I watched the light in his eyes dim a little more each time. I tried to set boundaries. I cornered Jessica one afternoon after she'd spent 2 hours filming Leo. "Jessica, I don't want Leo's face on the internet so much. He's too young to consent to this. He doesn't understand what's happening to these videos." She laughed at me, actually laughed a sharp, mocking sound. "Sarah, you don't get to make those decisions. Mom and Dad are his legal guardians financially. They gave permission. It's their call, not yours." She stepped closer, her voice dropping. "If you don't like it, maybe you should get a job and support him yourself. Oh wait, you tried that 3 years ago, didn't you? And look how that worked out. You can't. You're stuck here dependent on us, so you follow our rules. Got it?" The custody threat had evolved. It wasn't just implied anymore. It was explicit, weaponized, held over my head constantly. My parents had consulted with lawyers multiple times over the years. They had documentation of their financial support, bank statements showing every dollar they'd spent on Leo. They had character witnesses ready, their friends who'd testify that I was dependent, unstable, unable to provide. My mother's book club friends who barely knew me but would say whatever she asked. My father's golf buddies who'd never met Leo but would vouch for Richard's parenting abilities. They'd been building a case against me for years, just in case I ever tried to leave again. It was calculated, methodical, terrifying. I felt like I was suffocating, drowning in slow motion. Every day was the same nightmare loop. Wake up in my childhood bedroom, the same room I'd slept in as a teenager now, with a crib in the corner for Leo. Take care of Leo under my mother's constant supervision, her criticizing my every move. Watch Jessica parade through with her success, and her camera crew using my son as a prop. Sit through family dinners where I was either ignored or mocked, where I had to listen to my own inadequacies listed like facts. Go to bed feeling like I was dying inside, like I was disappearing one day at a time. The worst part was watching Leo start to change. He was becoming anxious, constantly seeking approval, terrified of making mistakes. He'd drop a toy and his whole body would tense, waiting for criticism. My mother's discipline was harsh and unforgiving. Timeouts that lasted hours. She'd put him in his room and make him sit on his bed in silence, no toys, no books, sometimes for 2 hours for minor infractions like knocking over a cup of juice. The yelling that echoed through the house was constant. "Leo, stop that, what's wrong with you? Why can't you just behave?" My father's emotional distance taught Leo that love was conditional, that affection had to be earned. My father would praise Leo only when he did something impressive, something worth bragging about. "That's my boy, so smart." But if Leo cried or showed fear, my father would go cold. "Boys don't cry, Leo. Be tough." Jessica's camera was always on him, teaching him that his value was tied to performance, to being entertaining. Leo learned quickly that if he performed, if he smiled on command, and played along with Jessica's scenarios, he got praise and gifts. If he didn't, he got ignored or criticized. He was 4 years old, and he was learning that love and attention had to be earned, that he was only valuable when he was useful or entertaining. I tried to protect him in small ways, inadequate ways, that I knew weren't enough. I'd sneak him extra snacks when my mother wasn't looking, hiding cookies in my pockets to give him when we were alone. I'd let him stay up past bedtime, reading stories in my bed. His little body curled against mine, whispering so my mother wouldn't hear through the walls. I'd take him to the park on Saturday mornings and let him just be a kid without anyone filming or critiquing, watching him run and play and laugh like he used to before everything got so heavy. But it wasn't enough. I knew it wasn't enough. He was being damaged, scarred, and I felt powerless to stop it. Every night, I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling of my childhood bedroom, listening to Leo's soft breathing from the crib, and I'd think, I'm failing him. I'm letting them hurt him because I'm too weak, too scared, too trapped to get us out. The guilt was crushing, suffocating, constant. Then came the incident that would change everything. It was a Saturday afternoon in late October. Leo had been particularly energetic that morning, running around the house playing loudly. My mother was irritated, complaining about the noise. Jessica had come over to film some content about autumn family traditions, or something equally manufactured. Leo was in his room, playing with his toy cars. He was making engine noises, crashing them together, being a normal 5-year-old boy. Jessica went upstairs to check on him, while I was helping my mother in the kitchen. We heard his happy playing sounds, and then suddenly they turned to screams. Not the normal "I fell down" cry. This was terror. Pure primal terror. I dropped the dish I was holding and ran. My mother followed. We burst into Leo's room, and the scene froze in my mind like a photograph. Jessica had somehow rigged a belt to the ceiling fan. She had Leo suspended upside down by his ankles, his shirt falling over his face, his small body swaying. Her phone was on a tripod, red recording light blinking. She was standing there smiling at the camera, narrating like this was normal. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to talk about creative discipline methods. My nephew Leo here is learning about consequences and speed. His mom is way too soft on him, so Auntie has to teach him the old-fashioned way. See how fear creates motivation? He'll be faster next time, I promise. Make sure to like this video and subscribe for more family content. Leo was sobbing, his face bright red, arms flailing helplessly. I lost my mind. I screamed at Jessica, grabbed Leo, and yanked him down. She actually had the audacity to look annoyed. Sarah, you completely ruined my shot. Do you know how long it took to set that up? This was going to be viral content. The algorithm loves controversial parenting tips. I was shaking, holding Leo against my chest, while he clung to me, hyperventilating. I turned to my parents, expecting them to finally see how sick this was. Surely this crossed a line. Surely even they could see that this was abuse. My father looked uncomfortable but said, Jess was just demonstrating a point. You're overreacting, Sarah. Boys need tough love sometimes. My mother actually nodded in agreement. We used to do similar things with you girls. A little fear builds character. Maybe if Leo had more discipline, he wouldn't be so wild. In that moment, standing in that bedroom with my traumatized child in my arms, while my family defended torture disguised as content creation, I realized something that should have been obvious years ago. They were never going to change. This was never going to get better. They didn't see Leo as a person. They saw him as an extension of themselves, a prop, a tool for control. That night, after everyone went to bed, I sat on the floor of my bathroom with my phone, searching desperately for answers. How do you escape when you have no money? No job, no place to go. When they've threatened to take your child if you leave, I felt hopeless, trapped in a prison made of financial dependence and emotional manipulation. Then I remembered Mrs. Davis, our elderly neighbor. She was kind, always smiled at Leo when we'd see her outside. Earlier that week, she'd stopped me while I was taking out the trash. She'd looked at me with concern and asked, Honey, are you all right? I've been hearing some troubling things coming from your house. I'd brushed her off then, too scared to admit the truth. But now, in my desperation, I slipped out of the house after midnight. Mrs. Davis's porch light was still on. She opened the door in her bathrobe, took one look at my face, and pulled me inside. I told her everything, every terrible detail. She listened without judgment, and when I finished, she handed me a business card. This is a women's crisis center, she said gently. They help people in situations like yours. They have lawyers, safe houses, resources. Call them tomorrow. Don't tell your family, just call. She hugged me and I cried into her shoulder, the first real comfort I'd felt in years. The next morning, while my family was distracted watching Jessica's latest real estate show on TV, I locked myself in the bathroom and called the number. A calm voice answered. Safe Harbor Women's Center. How can we help you today? I whispered my situation, half expecting them to tell me there was nothing they could do. Instead, the woman said, "You can get out. We can help you, but you need to be smart about this. Are you safe right now? Can you talk freely?" I wasn't safe and I couldn't talk freely, but I managed to schedule an in-person appointment for the next day. They gave me an address and told me to come alone to tell my family I was going to a doctor's appointment. I spent the rest of that day in a fog, mechanically going through the motions, while my mind raced with possibilities and terror. The appointment was with a lawyer named Catherine Evans. She was in her 50s, sharp-eyed with a no-nonsense demeanor that immediately put me at ease. I told her everything again, and she took notes, asked questions, gathered details. Then she laid out a plan that seemed impossible and yet was the only way forward. "Sarah, what your family is doing is financial abuse, emotional abuse, and what Jessica did to Leo constitutes child endangerment. We can build a case, but we need evidence. I need you to go back home and document everything, record conversations, save text messages, take photos of anything relevant. Can you do that?" I nodded, even though I was terrified. She continued, "Don't confront them. Don't tell them you're planning to leave. Act normal, compliant, exactly as you have been. We're going to build an airtight case, and then we're going to get you and Leo out of there safely. Do you understand?" I understood. For the first time in 5 years, I had hope and a plan. The next 2 weeks were the longest of my life. I became a spy in my own home. I kept my phone's voice recorder running during family dinners, capturing my father's controlling comments and my mother's cruel criticisms. I screenshotted every demanding text from Jessica. I documented every time they threatened me with custody. I photographed Leo's increasingly anxious behavior, his night terrors, his fear of making mistakes. Jessica made it easy by being her usual self. She posted that video of Leo hanging upside down, though she edited it to make it look playful rather than terrifying. But I had the raw footage she'd saved on the family computer. I copied it onto a USB drive while everyone was asleep. That video alone, Ms. Evans said, would be damning evidence. My family noticed nothing. Why would they? I'd been obedient for so long. I played my role perfectly. I smiled at dinners. I thanked Jessica for her generosity. I let my mother dictate Leo's schedule. I was the perfect, broken, compliant victim they'd created. But inside I was changing. Every piece of evidence I gathered made me stronger. Every secret conversation with Miss Evans gave me courage. Every moment I spent planning our escape filled me with a determination I'd forgotten I had. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was preparing for war. Ms. Evans worked quickly. She filed for an emergency protective order, citing the video evidence and my documented testimony. She contacted a safe house that had space for me and Leo. She helped me open a bank account at a different bank, one my parents couldn't access. She even lined up job interviews for me at several schools, using her connections to vouch for me. The escape plan was simple, but required perfect timing. Ms. Evans would send a car early on a Monday morning before dawn, before anyone in my family woke up. I would have exactly 30 minutes to grab Leo, our essential documents, and a bag of clothes I'd secretly packed. The car would take us to the safe house. By the time my family realized we were gone, we'd be untraceable, protected by lawyers and the legal system. The night before our escape, I barely slept. I lay in bed listening to the sounds of the house, my father's snoring, my mother's sleep apnea machine, Jessica's late-night phone call in her old room where she'd been staying the weekend. This house had been my childhood home, then my prison. Tomorrow it would be my past. At 4:30 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text. "Car is 2 minutes away. Be ready." I moved silently, years of tiptoeing around my family's moods, making me an expert at stealth. I gently lifted Leo from his bed. He barely stirred, just snuggled against my shoulder. I grabbed the bag I'd hidden in my closet. Documents, clothes, Leo's favorite stuffed lion, and the USB drive with all the evidence. I crept down the stairs, heart pounding so hard I thought it would wake everyone. The front door seemed miles away. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like thunder, but I made it. I stepped outside into the cool pre-dawn air, and there was a small blue sedan waiting at the curb, hazard lights blinking softly. A woman got out, smiled kindly, and opened the back door. I secured Leo in a car seat they'd provided, and then I got in. As we pulled away from that house, I looked back one last time. Every window was dark. They had no idea I was gone. They had no idea I'd finally found the strength to leave. I felt a tear slide down my cheek, but it wasn't sadness, it was relief. We were free. The safe house was a modest apartment in a quiet neighborhood 40 minutes away. It was small, clean, and most importantly, it was ours. No one there to criticize, no one to control us, no cameras, just peace. Leo woke up confused, asking where we were. I knelt down to his level and said, "We're on an adventure, baby, just you and me, a new place, a fresh start." The first few days were surreal. I kept expecting my father to burst through the door. Every unknown car that drove by made me tense. But Ms. Evans assured me we were protected. The emergency protective order had been granted. My family legally could not contact us or come near us. If they tried, they'd be arrested. And oh, did they try. My phone, which I'd kept for evidence purposes, exploded with messages and calls. First came the confusion. "Where are you? Why aren't you home? Is Leo okay?" Then came the manipulation. "Sarah, we're so worried. Please just talk to us. Whatever you think happened, we can work it out." My mother left voicemails crying, saying I was breaking her heart. When the gentle approach didn't work, the real them emerged. My father texted, "You've made the biggest mistake of your life. We will get Leo, and you will have nothing." Jessica called me selfish, ungrateful, a horrible mother. She posted on social media about her troubled sister who'd kidnapped her nephew, painting herself as the concerned aunt. Her followers ate it up, sending me hate messages and threats. But I didn't respond. Ms. Evans had warned me not to. Every message they sent was just more evidence of their harassment. We were building an ironclad case, not just for the protective order to become permanent, but for full custody and to ensure they'd never hurt Leo again. During this time, Ms. Evans uncovered something crucial. She'd been investigating Jessica's finances as part of our case, looking for proof of the financial control they'd wielded over me. What she found was explosive. Jessica wasn't just a successful real estate agent. She was a fraud. She'd been embezzling money from clients, falsifying documents, and running what essentially amounted to a pyramid scheme with first-time homebuyers. Her entire empire was built on lies and stolen money. Ms. Evans compiled all the evidence and did something brilliant. She didn't go to Jessica directly. She went to the State Real Estate Board and the District Attorney's Office. She sent them an anonymous tip with concrete proof: bank statements showing irregular transfers, forged signatures, testimony from confused clients who'd been scammed. The investigation was launched immediately, and Jessica had no idea it was coming. 3 weeks after our escape, the dominoes started falling. Jessica was called in for questioning by the state board. Her accounts were frozen. Her real estate license was suspended pending investigation. Her employer, a major real estate firm, put her on immediate unpaid leave. Within a week, she was fired, and the firm publicly distanced themselves from her to protect their reputation. The local news picked up the story. Local real estate agent under investigation for fraud and embezzlement. Jessica's face was all over the news, but not in the way she'd always dreamed. Not as the successful influencer, as a criminal. Her social media presence, which she'd spent years cultivating, imploded. Sponsors dropped her, followers abandoned her in droves. The comments on her posts turned vicious. Her perfect life was revealed as a facade. The financial impact on my parents was immediate. Turns out they'd been living almost entirely off Jessica's income. My father had retired early, banking on Jessica supporting them. My mother had developed expensive tastes paid for by Jessica's fraud money. Their house, the house I'd grown up in, was mortgaged to the hilt, with a reverse mortgage they'd taken out expecting Jessica's money to keep rolling in. Without Jessica's income, they couldn't make payments. The bank started foreclosure proceedings. My father tried to get loans, but their credit was destroyed. My mother's friends from the country club started avoiding her when the news broke about Jessica. The perfect family image they'd maintained for decades crumbled in weeks. Meanwhile, Leo and I were thriving in ways I hadn't thought possible. I got a job at the elementary school I'd applied to years ago. The principal remembered me and was impressed by my determination. The pay wasn't great, but it came with benefits, stability, and dignity. I could pay for our apartment. I could buy Leo's food and clothes with my own money. For the first time in 5 years, I wasn't dependent on anyone. Leo started therapy. A child psychologist who specialized in family trauma worked with him twice a week. At first, he was withdrawn, afraid to talk about what had happened. But slowly he opened up. He drew pictures of Jessica's camera of my parents' angry faces, of feeling scared all the time. The therapist said he showed signs of anxiety and PTSD, but with treatment and a stable environment, he'd heal. And he was healing. In that small apartment, away from the chaos and abuse, Leo was becoming himself. He laughed more. He played without looking over his shoulder. He started kindergarten at a public school near our apartment and made friends. His teacher said he was bright, creative, and kind. He was going to be okay. We were going to be okay. But my family wasn't done. About 2 months after we'd left, they found us. I still don't know how. Maybe they hired a private investigator. Maybe they stalked Ms. Evans. Whatever the method, they showed up at our apartment building one evening. I was making dinner, Leo was doing homework at the kitchen table, and suddenly there was pounding on the door. "Sarah, open this door right now!" My father's voice loud and angry. More pounding. My mother's voice joined in. "You can't keep our grandson from us, we have rights." Then Jessica, hysterical. "You destroyed my life, everything I built, you're going to pay for this." Leo's face went white with fear. I grabbed my phone and called 911, keeping my voice calm and steady. "I need police immediately. I have a protective order against my family and they're violating it. They're at my door threatening me." The operator stayed on the line telling me help was on the way. The pounding continued. My father threatened to break down the door. My mother was crying, begging me to just talk to them. Jessica was screaming obscenities. Neighbors started opening their doors, looking concerned. Someone yelled that they'd called the police too. I held Leo close, telling him it was going to be okay, that we were safe. The police arrived within 5 minutes. I heard them ordering my family to step away from the door. There was arguing, more yelling, and then blessed silence. An officer knocked gently. "Ma'am, it's the police. You're safe. Can you open the door?" I checked through the peephole, first saw 2 uniformed officers, and opened the door a crack. They were professional and prompt. They took my statement. They verified the protective order. They informed me that my family had been detained and would be charged with violating the order. "They'll likely spend the night in jail," one officer said, "and the judge won't look kindly on this behavior. Your order will almost certainly be extended and strengthened." After they left, I locked every lock, checked every window, and sat on the floor with Leo, just holding him. He asked me, "Are they gone forever now, Mommy?" I kissed his forehead and said, "They're not going to hurt us anymore, baby. I promise." And I meant it. Every fiber of my being was committed to keeping that promise. The court hearing following their arrest was intense. Ms. Evans had prepared meticulously. She presented the judge with everything. The video of Leo being hung upside down, the recordings of my parents' controlling behavior, the threatening text messages, the evidence of Jessica's financial fraud and how they'd used money to control me, the documentation of their violation of the protective order. The judge listened to all of it, his expression growing increasingly grave. When it was my family's turn to speak, their lawyer was clearly floundering. How do you defend the indefensible? My father tried to claim I'd misunderstood their intentions. My mother cried and said they just wanted to see their grandson. Jessica called me vindictive and claimed I'd fabricated evidence. The judge wasn't having it. He extended the protective order for 5 years. He mandated that they could have no contact with me or Leo directly or through third parties. He stated clearly that any further violations would result in serious criminal charges. He also referred the case to Child Protective Services to ensure Leo's well-being was monitored and to note the danger my family posed. But the real consequence came from an unexpected source. Remember that video of Leo? The one Jessica had edited and posted. Ms. Evans didn't just use it for our custody case. She sent it to a local investigative news program that specialized in exposing child abuse and exploitation on social media. They'd been running a series on the dangers of family influencer culture and how children were being harmed for content. The news program reached out to me. They wanted to do a story with my permission about what had happened. They'd blur Leo's face and change our names, but they wanted to use the real video to show how far some people would go for views and likes. I hesitated at first, but Ms. Evans encouraged it. "This isn't just about you anymore," she said. "This could prevent other children from being exploited. This could hold Jessica accountable in a way the legal system might not." I agreed. The story aired on a Friday evening during prime time. The anchor introduced it with, "Tonight we investigate a disturbing trend. Social media influencers using children, even harming them for content and profit. What you're about to see may be difficult to watch, but it's necessary viewing for anyone who consumes family content online." They showed Jessica's video. Even with Leo's face blurred, the horror was clear. A child suspended upside down, screaming in terror, while an adult smiled at a camera and talked about discipline and fear. The video went viral overnight. Not the way Jessica had hoped, but in a way that destroyed her completely. The internet is unforgiving when it turns against someone. People found Jessica's social media accounts. They found my parents. They found old videos of Jessica using Leo as a prop, criticizing him, exploiting him. Every comment section filled with outrage. People dug into Jessica's past, found her fraud charges, found everything. Cancel culture, for all its flaws, occasionally targets someone who actually deserves it. Jessica tried to defend herself in a tearful video apology. "I never meant to hurt my nephew. I was just trying to teach him a lesson. I love him so much." But it was too late. The damage was done. Her remaining followers abandoned her. Brands that had tentatively stayed despite the fraud charges now ran screaming. She was toxic, radioactive, unemployable in the digital space. The criminal charges against Jessica for child endangerment moved forward, bolstered by the public outcry and the undeniable evidence. She tried to take a plea deal, but the prosecutor, feeling the weight of public pressure, pushed for the maximum. Jessica ended up with a suspended sentence, 2 years of probation, mandatory community service, and a permanent mark on her record. She'd never work in real estate again. Her influencer career was dead. Her life as she knew it was over. My parents' consequences were less legally dramatic, but perhaps more devastating personally. They lost their house to foreclosure. The media attention meant all their friends and extended family learned the truth. They were ostracized from their social circles. The people who'd once envied their successful daughter and perfect family now pitied them or avoided them entirely. They had to move into a small apartment in a less desirable part of town. My father had to come out of retirement and take a job at a hardware store just to make ends meet. My mother, who'd spent decades cultivating an image of upper-middle-class sophistication, now shopped at thrift stores and clipped coupons. The reversal of fortune was complete. Through all of this, Leo and I built our new life. 1 year after our escape, we were in such a different place. Our apartment was small, but filled with warmth and love. Leo's therapy was going well. He still had nightmares, sometimes still flinched at loud noises, but he was a happy kid most days. He loved school, loved his friends, loved the freedom to just be a child. I'd been promoted at work to a full-time teacher's aide position with a modest raise. I was taking online classes toward my teaching certification. I'd made friends with other single moms at Leo's school. I'd started going to a support group for survivors of family abuse. I was building a support system, a real one, not built on fear and obligation, but on mutual respect and genuine care. The hardest part wasn't the practical stuff. We figured out rent, groceries, daycare. The hardest part was the emotional aftermath. I had to unlearn years of conditioning. I had to stop feeling guilty for protecting my son. I had to stop expecting punishment for standing up for myself. I had to learn that I was worthy of respect, that my needs mattered, that saying no wasn't selfish. Therapy helped. I found a counselor who specialized in trauma from family abuse. She helped me understand that what I'd experienced was real abuse, even without physical violence. Financial control is abuse. Emotional manipulation is abuse. Using a child as leverage is abuse. I'd been gaslit for so long into thinking I was overreacting, being dramatic, being ungrateful. Learning to trust my own perception of reality was revolutionary. There were moments of weakness, times I almost called my mother, almost reached out, almost fell back into old patterns. But then I'd look at Leo, see his smile, hear his laugh, watch him play without fear. And I'd remember why we left. He was thriving. I was healing. That was worth more than any reconciliation with people who'd never really loved me, only controlled me. 2 years after our escape, something unexpected happened. I received a letter. It was from my mother, forwarded through Ms. Evans so my mother wouldn't have my direct address. I almost threw it away without reading it, but curiosity won. The letter wasn't what I expected. It wasn't angry or manipulative. It was sad. My mother wrote about how she and my father had lost everything. How Jessica was working minimum wage jobs and living in a studio apartment, her glory days over. How they barely spoke to each other anymore, too busy blaming each other for their downfall. She didn't ask to see Leo. She didn't beg for reconciliation. She just said, "I think I finally understand what we did to you. I'm sorry it took losing everything to see it. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I know now." I read that letter multiple times. Part of me felt vindicated. They'd finally acknowledged the truth. Part of me felt sad for the family we could have been if they'd been capable of love instead of control. But mostly, I felt nothing. Or rather, I felt free. Their admission didn't change anything. It didn't undo the years of abuse. It didn't erase Leo's trauma. It was just words on paper too little too late. I never responded to that letter. Maybe that makes me cold. Maybe some would say I should have accepted the apology extended grace. But grace isn't the same as allowing people back into your life. I could acknowledge their suffering without sacrificing my peace. I could hope they genuinely changed without testing that theory with my son's well-being. Some doors once closed should stay closed. 3 years post-escape, and life is beautifully ordinary. Leo is 7 now, thriving in 2nd grade. He wants to be a marine biologist because we went to an aquarium last summer and he fell in love with dolphins. I got my teaching certification and now have my own classroom. I make enough money to move us to a slightly bigger apartment with 2 bedrooms. Leo has his own room decorated with ocean posters and glow-in-the-dark stars. I've even started dating cautiously. A kind man named David, a social worker I met through my support group. He understands trauma, he respects boundaries. He treats Leo with gentle patience, never trying to replace anyone, just being a positive presence. We take things slow. I'm learning what healthy relationships look like, what it means to be with someone who values me rather than uses me. Sometimes people who know my story ask if I regret anything, if I wish I'd left sooner. The honest answer is complicated. Of course I wish Leo hadn't suffered. Of course I wish I'd been stronger earlier, but I also understand now that I left when I was capable of leaving. Before that, I was too broken, too controlled, too afraid. The journey to that breaking point was necessary, as painful as that is to admit. What I don't regret is leaving, not for 1 second. Even on the hardest days when money is tight, or Leo has a bad night, or I'm overwhelmed with single parenting, I never once wish we'd stayed. Because that house, that family, that life wasn't love. It was a gilded cage and we shattered the bars. The final chapter in this saga came recently. Jessica reached out, not to me directly, but through a mutual acquaintance. She wanted me to know she was in therapy, working on herself, and she hoped someday I might let her apologize to Leo in person. My answer was swift and clear: no, not now, not ever. Leo doesn't remember much about what happened, and I want to keep it that way. He knows we used to live with grandparents and an aunt, and we left because it wasn't safe. That's enough. He doesn't need to revisit that trauma for Jessica's redemption arc. Maybe I'm being harsh. Maybe people do change. But my responsibility isn't to Jessica's healing. It's to Leo's safety and my own peace. We don't owe our abusers a chance to make themselves feel better. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stay away. So here we are. On a sunny Saturday morning, Leo and I are at the park. He's running around with a kite shaped like a sea turtle, his laughter carried on the wind. I'm sitting on a bench drinking coffee, watching him. This is what peace looks like. Not the absence of struggle, but the presence of safety. Not a perfect life, but an authentic one. I think about all those years I believed I was trapped, that there was no way out. I think about how they convinced me I was too weak, too dependent, too incapable to survive on my own. Every day I prove them wrong. Every smile on Leo's face is proof that we made the right choice. Every bill I pay with my own money is a declaration of independence. Every boundary I maintain is an act of self-love. My family taught me a painful lesson about fear. They believed fear created speed, created obedience, created control. And they were half right. Fear did make me move, but not in the way they intended. Fear of Leo becoming like them. Fear of wasting more years in that prison. Fear of dying without ever really living. That's what gave me the courage to run. And once I started running, I discovered something they never wanted me to know. I was fast enough. I was strong enough. I was enough. So to everyone who's ever felt trapped in a toxic family situation, who's been told you can't make it on your own, who's sacrificing your well-being for people who don't appreciate it, hear this. You can leave. You can survive. You can build a life that's yours. It won't be easy. There will be dark days and hard choices. But on the other side of that, fear is freedom. And freedom, even in a tiny apartment with financial struggles and emotional scars, is better than any gilded cage. The people who truly love you won't threaten you with loss if you set boundaries. They won't use money or children as weapons. They won't require you to shrink yourself to make them comfortable. Real love expands, it supports, it respects. Anything less is just control dressed up in family obligation. Leo calls out to me, his kite soaring high above the trees. "Mom, look how high it is, I'm flying." I wave back, my heart full. "Yeah, baby, I think. We're both flying now. and we're never coming back down. Have you ever felt trapped in a toxic family situation? Have you had to make the impossible choice between people you love and your own well-being? I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. Sometimes just knowing we're not alone makes all the difference. And if this story resonated with you, if it gave you hope, or made you think differently about family loyalty, please hit that like button and subscribe. Your support helps me keep sharing these stories. What would you have done in my situation? Would you have left sooner? Would you have responded to my mother's letter? Let me know in the comments. Let's talk about it.